pre-recorded message is a reminder to hit the like button down below the stream. Really helps me out and gets this more views across YouTube. And I also want to let you know that you can type a zip code down in the chat, and I will answer your local questions from that stream. Thanks so much to everybody who is joining me here on this Sunday in the early afternoon time frame here on the East Coast, 11:50 in Central Time right now, but where I am it's 12:50 Eastern Time. We've got 10:50 over in Mountain Time, and then 9:50 for this update there on the Pacific coastline. Regardless of where you are, this update is intended to give you kind of a look at what we've got going on in the upcoming pattern, including the severe weather today. And really, that's the entire purpose of this live stream, to brief on the severe weather. We'll also talk about the winter weather alerts that we've got over a lot of parts of the northern plains right now as well. We'll talk about that in this as well. So if you're just joining me right now, type down in the chat hello, send me a zip code, whatever you want. Down there, and I'll kind of get back to that in just a moment. But again, if you put in a zip code, I will get to your local forecast here in just a minute. But let's start off just looking at today's severe weather risk. It has been upgraded to enhanced as of the midday update here on Sunday from the Storm Prediction Center. The enhanced risk zone does include areas from Dodge City there in Kansas, on down there to Woodward and just west of Oklahoma City there in Oklahoma. But if you live really anywhere in any color here on the screen, that means that you have at least some risk for severe weather today. That goes from southern Nebraska all the way on down here into parts of south central Texas. So all of these areas need to be on high alert today for the potential of briefly severe weather. And again, this is based off of a supercell threat developing this afternoon. So if you live anywhere from northwestern Kansas in the Hayes area there, so let's just go kind of city by city and just kind of break down where this is first, and then we'll kind of dive deeper into what the individual threats are. Really anywhere from McCook there and into parts of Nebraska. You've got Colby here in Kansas, Scott City along that 83 corridor, the I-70 corridor there near Hayes, Kansas, Russell, Great Bend, Larned, Dodge City, Pratt, Kingman, Wichita, Hutchinson, all these areas, you've got a level 2 risk for severe weather today. And in fact, in Pratt, it is a level 3 risk for severe weather today. And again, this is going to be a hail-driven threat. If you go on down there into parts of Oklahoma, areas along that I-40 corridor west of Oklahoma City, on up there towards Woodward and Enid, those are our areas where we're watching today for the threat of some big hail, as well as some tornadoes as well. And all the way on down here, the slight risk has been extended to include places just near Dallas and southwest of town as well, into Stephenville and Brownwood there in Texas as well. And again, let's take a look at the individual hazards that we've got out of this today from the Storm Prediction Center. Let's look at the tornado. We'll actually look at the tornado threat last. I want to start off with wind. Wind is not going to be our main concern out of the storms today, but it is just breezy over the plains already to begin with. So if you live anywhere from Hayes, Kansas, all the way on down here to the Kerrville, Texas area, really up through this area. That's where you'll get some local, already strong wind gusts moving through. We've got high wind alerts, and we'll look at the alerts in just a minute here. But certainly some 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts not out of the question. Some 70-mile-per-hour ones not even out of the question out of a few of these showers and storms that develop later today. Again, this is what is driving today's threat, though, and it is hail. And here is that hail outlook for today. There, you can see that's exactly right in line with where that enhanced risk has been issued. So any of these red colors right here, this isn't a hatched hail risk, so it doesn't mean the storm Prediction Center is expecting widespread, 2+ inch hail. But we're certainly looking at the potential, and let's change the color here just so you can kind of see. I wouldn't rule out in these areas I'm hashing out right in there, really anywhere kind of in this area, some brief 2-inch hail, but that is not going to be widespread enough to, kind of force them to pull the trigger on that hatched risk. But again, here's our tornado risk for the day today, and we have seen it expand a little bit with this latest update from the Storm Prediction Center. And again, we've still got the afternoon update coming up in a few hours, and we'll see what ends up coming out of that update from the Storm Prediction Center. Obviously, I'm not going to be live all afternoon. This is just, a quick update stream. You can put your zip codes in the chat if you're just joining me to get a local update here. On whatever kind of weather you're experiencing the next few days. But again, where this tornado threat sets up, it's setting up right where these storms are going to kind of form right in here. We'll get some supercells kind of in a track like this. They'll begin progressing on off towards the northeast, and there's a kind of a narrow window where they have to be at their strongest point. But when they do, and I think Caden Ruzica did a really good job of pointing this out down in the chat below. He said, honestly, I wouldn't be surprised to see a strong tornado, and I certainly agree. I think the environmental factors might come together well enough for somewhere kind of in this area to briefly get a stronger tornado, obviously, hopefully over maybe an open field out there in the central and southern plains. But there are some very populated areas in this tornado risk, and it's just west of Oklahoma City as well. So if you live anywhere in this tornado risk, be prepared. I don't think there's going to be many tornadoes necessarily, but if there is one, it's in a kind of environment where it could be briefly strong. I mean, that is certainly something to very closely kind of keep an eye on there as we progress with time. Now, let's go on over now. And I want to kind of turn on the future radar here from the HRRR model. A brand new run just came out, and it is that 15Z run. And in fact, the 16 is processing right now, but this is our most recent kind of one that's going to help us out with this short-term future radar. And again, playing this on out, you can see we've got this not even really convection, just shower coverage throughout the rest of this afternoon over parts of Kansas and on down as well into parts of central Oklahoma. And I think that can make things a little interesting in terms of kind of more in the way of stabilizing the atmosphere kind of here, kind of keeping it cooler at the surface especially. But nonetheless, the models have indicated, and we've seen this a little bit with later timing on the NAM, but certainly the HRRR model here showing the initial development of those supercells right in that 2% zone that we've got from the Storm Prediction Center here, so around 4, 5, 6 o'clock Central Time. That's probably when these are going to first start firing up southwest Kansas, western Oklahoma, on down to Abilene, Texas as well. These storms are most likely to be in that most favorable tornado environment, and I did not mean to go that far on the future radar. I apologize. Let's go back. There we go, right there. Probably going to be moving through that most favorable environment sometime around sundown into the early evening hours here. I think the best chance for strong tornadoes is going to be sometime between around 6 and 8 Central Time here over parts of south central Kansas, into parts of northwest and north central Oklahoma. But again, remember, even down here, there is a little bit of a tornado risk out of some of these cells down here into parts of north central Texas. And again, we'll have to continue to watch those as they push towards the east. But you can definitely see how quickly these become disorganized up here closer to 11 p.m. tonight over Kansas. Maybe still some stronger ones lingering around. And I think this line is going to become our actual focal point of concern as we go towards the middle of tonight, with hail, wind, and maybe a brief spin-up tornado there just west of Dallas. As that line tries to get going again, that's going to kind of weaken as it tries to head eastward as well. But again, it's that supercell threat that we get this evening, especially close to sundown in this area, that's going to make for interesting conditions there. But again, that's not the only side of the storm that we have to talk about. Hello, Severe Storm Filmer. Thanks so much for joining me in the chat. If you're new and just now joining me in the channel as well, please hit that like button. Subscribe to the channel as well for frequent videos and updates and streams in the future as well. But let's get kind of back into this discussion. In this tornado risk, it's very conditional, but it definitely has a little bit of a high ceiling. And kind of taking a look, I want to look at the dew points that we've got popping on up today. Let me show you here, playing this on out, and there's going to be a dry line set up for this today for sure. And I kind of wanted to produce a video today, but I wanted to go live a little bit too, so I could answer any individual questions some people might have. And look at this little band of higher dew points. And again, this kind of lines up with that evening time frame when we're going to have the potential for those tornadoes. This is why the Storm Prediction Center kind of likes this area for the 5%, because the more favorable ingredients in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere in this region as well, with wind shear, etc. And then you've also got enough of mid 50s to even upper 50s dew points starting to stretch into this region. And remember, the original thought was that there weren't even going to be low 50s barely in this region. So the dew points are definitely a little higher than expected. That's going to be enough to especially support that hail threat. And again, definitely, especially I think this zone right here, maybe watch again for that locally strong tornado there. But again, with these kinds of dew points in the 60s down here, remember that's very supportive of severe weather. These 60s for dew points with this kind of setup on down here in north central Texas. If we get even more of those atmospheric prime ingredients there, wouldn't be shocked if we eventually see a little bit more of what would be necessary for a 5% tornado risk down here as well. So that's just kind of my analysis on today's situation in terms of the severe weather threat. Now, obviously, let's turn this back on over to the reflectivity product. Which is going to give us, again, that future radar-like mode here to our future radar. And let's go on over to the day 2, just overall risk. And what we've got going on day 2, this is as we go into the day on Monday here, we've got a level 2 severe weather threat starting to try and get on up there closer to Memphis. Really, the slight risk, though, is quite dominant down here in southeast Arkansas through entirety. No one getting left out there in Louisiana, and then southwestern parts of Mississippi as well getting in on a level 2 of 5 severe weather threat. There will also be a little risk for brief supercells on up there in Iowa. I don't think that's going to be too much of our concern. But what we do have a little bit of, and let's go back to the slightly earlier run that's going to give us the full length of run. And I see your question, Jai, and what is the outlook for Nashville on Tuesday? I will get to you in just a moment. But let's just kind of discuss the severe weather threat as we go into Monday. And again, you can kind of see that line segment as we go into the afternoon. It looks like it's going to stretch all the way on up there into parts of southern Missouri, probably mostly subsevere there. But again, notice the southern end of this line, probably going to be a QLCS type setup, which is linear convective system, and we're going to have some gusty winds along this, mostly around 60 miles per hour in scattered fashion. We'll also be watching some of these more individual cells that can pop up along the line for brief supercell, low-end tornado potential. I think tomorrow's tornado potential is not extremely strong, but there probably will be a few scattered brief or weak ones for sure. And it certainly looks like this line as we go through the evening hours Monday will continue to be more feisty here through parts of Mississippi, eastern Louisiana as well. And again, I still think it's worth watching this line in western Kentucky, western Tennessee, and see what it could do as we head into the day on Tuesday. But to answer your question, Jai, I apologize if I mispronounced that. What is the outlook for Nashville on Tuesday? There is no severe weather risk expected on Tuesday in Nashville. And it looks like anything that could move through would just be some brief shower and storm coverage. And it looks like just to your north, that's where the best chance for some briefly severe weather will be. But I can kind of show you why the Storm Prediction Center is a little bit jumpy on putting a marginal risk actually to your north there as we go in towards our Tuesday. And then there's also one further to the south of you. You're kind of splitting the difference there. There's going to be that original line that kind of heads eastward through the morning hours. But what I want to note for you here, watch that little secondary line that forms, and that's the reason for the marginal risk on up there in Indiana and Kentucky as we go towards the afternoon hours Tuesday. If that line happens to extend further south, it could include you in Nashville, and there could be some briefly gusty winds along that line. But overall, I wouldn't be expecting really any severe weather in a place like Nashville. But actually on up there through parts of Indiana, central and north central Kentucky, western Ohio, we'll be watching a brief gusty wind threat, I think, as we go through the day on Tuesday. Cherokee George. Afternoon all, I'm in 68005, which is just south of Omaha. May miss all the severe and snowy weather, getting good rains and maybe some thunderstorms tomorrow, and some strong winds. Yeah, let's take a look at your conditions there. If you're just joining me now on the stream, please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new, and definitely put your zip code in the chat if you want a local forecast for you. But let's go on over, and I want to turn off the severe weather outlooks for now, and let's just go on over, kind of take a look at the overall storm system that we're dealing with here. And I'm glad I got that question, kind of a very convenient time for that question, because I want to talk about the snowy side of the storm, the winds as well. You're welcome, Jay. And let's just continue to kind of play this on out and go back a little bit here. And there we go. So in a place like Omaha, um, first of all, there it looks like you're going to get, yeah, you're going to kind of split the difference. It looks like you're not going to see too much of a severe weather threat, but if you get one, it could be this evening into the overnight, probably just some of those lingering storms that were maybe once supercells. But in a place like Omaha, looks like you might try to get some showers and storms. It's going to maybe be a transition late tomorrow. So late Monday going into our early Tuesday, a transition briefly to some snow at the tail end of the storm as it wraps around. So late Monday night going into Tuesday morning, you might actually get some quick snow accumulation. But the heavier snow accumulations are definitely going to be right in this region here. And that's where we've also got some alerts for blizzard warnings, etc. Especially back on down here, coming out of the high plains where the winds are going to be really atrocious. But this low is going to be weakening a little bit, but that just makes it really big. And look at how expansive this thing is by the time we go into early Tuesday here in the morning hours. Just a big storm system complex there, and we'll have to continue to watch. Some of this wraparound snow because I think there could be some brief snow, kind of squall like snow, pushing back around on the very tail end of this with blowing snow, whiteout conditions to kind of close out this event as we head into Tuesday. So that's definitely going to be something I'm also kind of keeping an eye on. But yeah, in Omaha, you're definitely kind of, I agree with you in your comment, you're definitely kind of splitting the difference of all the worst modes. Um, but if I go on over now and we take a look at how much snow is going to be coming, and let's do that. Here we go. Now we can see how much snow is on the way. And you can definitely see where the heavier snow totals are being projected here. Again, this is a lot of this is these areas here. That's going to be, especially in the parts of central Minnesota right in there. That's where it's going to be snowing a lot of this event, if not the whole time. But you've got some of these local areas here that are going to turn over to snow at the back end of this event. That's going to be some nice snow into parts of Nebraska, southeast South Dakota to end the event. So you actually start with rain. Once you turn over to snow, I mean, that's a permanent change over. In fact, and let me actually turn on the drawings so you can see them on my screen now. There you go. Some of these areas that I got circled right here, I mean, you start off with rain storms, then you turn over to snow. That allows for that snow to accumulate quite nicely there. So that's definitely something very interesting to see. But again, on up here into parts of Minnesota, northwest Wisconsin as well, we'll get kind of in and out of some of the different impacts of rain, snow as well. But in terms of wind, that's something we're also very concerned about. And going over to our National Weather Service hazards map here on Pivotal Weather, it's not going to fit in my screen perfectly, and I apologize for that. In fact, let's go on over to the full screen mode and pull that on up. And you can definitely see what we've got going on here, and where we've got the worst concerns of different impacts. And again, kind of pulling on it. Let's try and zoom this out just a little bit so you can see the table as well, the key. So you can definitely see on down here into parts, we've got all these wind alerts down here over the south central United States, some high wind warnings exiting parts of Texas there. I'm in northwest Oklahoma, Kansas. I mean, that's when you're talking some of those gusts 60 plus miles per hour. So that's definitely some very strong winds. Of course, always go to weather.gov to get your latest information from the National Weather Service. Lots of wind advisories over a lot of the Midwest and to the south as well. But also notice we've got blizzard warnings here through west central Nebraska into south central South Dakota. We might even get some more of those to extend here into parts of Minnesota and Wisconsin eventually, depending on how strong the winds are expected to be as they wrap back around this storm. But if we just kind of take a quick look at some of the wind gusts being anticipated by the NAM model here, and let's go back on over to this. There we go. Wind gusts. And look at this. I mean, some of these gusts as we go through this afternoon, easily in that 40 to 60 mile per hour range here in this circled area. Also down here into parts of New Mexico, West Texas. Really strong wind gusts there. And continuing to play this on out. I mean, the wind field looks to expand as we go into Monday. I don't know if it's going to be quite this bullish, but prepare for a lot of 30 to 40, 50 mile per hour wind gusts over the central United States into Monday morning. This is the reason for the blizzard warnings, though. Watch these winds ramp on up and try. There's kind of that local pocket of ramped up winds here on the back end of this storm. And also there's those high wind watches down here into parts of Memphis. And that's why right there some maybe 50, 60, 65 mile per hour gusts not out of the question in a place like Memphis. As we head into late Monday going into early Tuesday as well. So that's why we've already got watches being issued there. Probably eventually warnings. And continuing to play this out. It looks like the worst of these winds will probably die out on the back end of the system, but I really don't want anyone to underestimate some of these winds that are going to push on out ahead of it as well. I don't know if the NAM is should be this bullish on some of the winds that are out front of the storm. But I mean, those any of those orangish colors, that's where you're talking maybe 50, 60% in terms of um, 50, 60%, 50, 60 miles per hour. I don't know why I was saying percent there, my bad. Um, Miles per hour of wind there. Sorry for the little, just had a little bit of a, my brain just completely struggled there for about half a second. But let's go back onto this. And again, HRRR does show those winds out ahead of the storm. So if you live in areas that are going to get dragged through this area of the storm right in here, that's going to be some strong, a little bit more from the worst. And then as well down here in the southeast, probably spared from the worst of the wind as those kind of jump on over the mountains and head on up towards the northeastern part of the United States there. But we'll see what can happen out of these remnant winds in parts of Alabama and Georgia as we go into Tuesday as well. Again, if you're just now joining me, please put that zip code in the chat if you have any individual questions. But Michael Banks 1230 says, could you please tell me what will happen in Johnson City, Tennessee? Yeah, I saw your question. I apologize for not getting to it right away. I was just kind of in the forecasting part of this stream still a little bit there. Johnson City, Tennessee, certainly looks like there could be some briefly gusty winds as we head Monday going into Tuesday. In fact, some of those wind gusts banking up against the mountains could be closer to 50, 60 miles per hour. But in Johnson City proper, you'll kind of have to continue checking your local weather service office at weather.gov. That is weather.gov, the National Weather Service website. You can check that website, and it'll always let you know what your very latest alerts are. Probably some gusty winds there, some briefly heavy rain and storms, but you're not in a severe weather outline, and I don't really expect that to change unless we see some major new developments here. From the Storm Prediction Center or any of our other trusty, National Weather Service, any of that. So right now I don't anticipate any major severe weather for you in a place like Johnson City, Tennessee, but certainly some gusty winds Monday going into Tuesday and some heavy rainfall as well. But again, I don't think that's going to be necessarily something you should be too panicked about. But if you do get rain, let's flip back on over to Radar Omega now. This is our latest look on the models, and this isn't necessarily 100% going to come true. If you get some rain, it looks like you could get some during the afternoon hours here as we go. It looks like that's into Tuesday, yep. Into Tuesday, some heavy rain pushing on through that region. And again, it's pretty broken line. I wouldn't expect any severe weather along it. Only place we're rarely looking for severe weather, maybe late Tuesday, is going to be along this very conditional gusty wind threat here through Indiana. For certain there. And again, we can take a look at the overall NAM model and its wind gust projections, even beyond some of those models we just looked at a minute ago. And you can see how windy it is already over the plains right now. That continues. Some of these areas further east, look at that. I mean, NAM projecting some potential, 60, 70 mile per hour wind gusts pushing through places like Memphis, embedded kind of along that storm line that we could get through Monday. So we'll track that. And then it looks from there like the winds continue breaking up, but some parts of the Great Lakes will still have to contend with some 40, 50 mile per hour gusts as we head into, that's Tuesday there. And over some areas of the southeast as well, we'll see if some of these gusts can sneak on through parts of Georgia and the Carolinas, although that doesn't look quite as likely, nor for Virginia, West Virginia. The wind track is going to be more like so up through this region. There's going to be a wind track, and then starting and kind of up into that region as well. And that's terrible. Second drawing there. Let's do that again. More like this region, getting in on that southwesterly wind. That's going to be really strong. But again, we've got severe weather concerns over the next couple of days as well, but it does not include Johnson City. Caden Ruzika said, with the uptrend in today's severe event, am I going to change my outlook before the event? No, I'm not personally going to change my ONW severe skill that I put a 3 of 7 on for parts of Kansas and Oklahoma yesterday. I feel like I nailed the placement of that 3. In fact, we can take a look at how well I did on that. Let's turn on today's Storm Prediction Center outlook. And where they've got they're laying down the enhanced. And the reason I don't want to really put anything higher than a 3 is just because this is more conditional and it's more of a hail threat than anything, despite the risk for tornadoes. But again, here's that outlook. And let me just pull up my on my end my custom severe graphics. And we can pull up that outlook that I made yesterday and kind of see how similar that is. Let's go on over to that. And now Let's switch back on over to the full screen. There you go. And I feel like I did a pretty decent job outlining where I thought today's risk would happen. We can just kind of flip back to radar omega. There it is. There's today's risk zone from the Storm Prediction Center. Uh, and here's my outline for today that I made yesterday. They're at a level of 3 out of 5. I'm at a 3 out of 7. But remember, 7's really only going to be for 6 and 7 are really only going to be for extreme, like tornado outbreaks, etc. So I feel like that's a pretty good outline that I made yesterday. Kind of flipping back and forth, and you can kind of see the difference there. Not too off. And I've been kind of on that threat for the last couple of days. So pretty happy with that. Hello, Tiffany Coleman. Thanks so much for joining me in the chat. Much appreciated here on this Sunday afternoon. Please, if you're just joining me, leave a like on the stream and definitely put a zip code in the chat if you have individual questions for a location, because that is what this stream is all about, answering your questions. Let's go back on over. I want to go back to the snow for a minute here. And here are the snow totals. The HRRR is painting a very heavy snow picture on up here. And I want to zoom on in on the north central United States as well. And here are those totals that we're looking at out of the HRRR right here. And I mean, some of these totals are just atrociously heavy. And again, in a place like Minneapolis, Minnesota, this is going to start off as some snow, very heavy snow, foot and a half of it at that. But it's going to turn over to rain for a little bit of this event, and then turn back to snow at the very end. Some of these zones here, this is where it's either going to be snow the entire time or turn over to snow at the end, so you still get it to stick, probably. Okay. In fact, if I go on over to the multiple parameter part of this, look at this with the HRRR. Again, in a place like Minneapolis, you start off with the heavy snow, maybe even some sleet this afternoon. It is going to be very heavy snow into early Monday morning, late this afternoon through the night into early Monday morning. Turn over to rain, and then at the very, very end of this, you see that snow that's going to start to wrap back around. There's going to be some briefly light snow that's going to progress through that area. And that could at least bring a little quick accumulation at the end. But a lot of the heaviest accumulation comes before, in a place like any of this zone right here. The heaviest accumulation comes before it turns over to rain, okay? So that's going to be a little bit more unfortunate there if you're a snow lover in those areas. But yeah, Tiffany Coleman, we were discussing the enhanced risk just a little bit ago. And here it is. I'll put it back on the screen. Here's today's enhanced severe weather risk from Dodge City, Kansas, all the way on down there close to Oklahoma City. There areas just westward. We'll be watching a pretty conditional, especially hail threat. But I think somewhere along this slight and enhanced risk, we could briefly see a strong tornado. Again, yep, driven by hail. You're correct on that. But again, I think it's mostly going to be a conditional hail threat. Some pretty scattered, even a little bit more, and pretty much every supercell that forms in this area. It's probably going to be some 1 to 2 inch hail coming out of them. And then through the rest of this area, scattered 1 inch hail. And a very localized brief tornado threat. But again, if you get that brief tornado, it could be on the stronger side, and that's why we're a little concerned about today's severe weather potential through those zones. But yeah, certainly very well said, Tiffany. Enhanced risk driven by hail today. The enhanced outline is literally where we have the hail threat today. And I almost feel like redrawing today's severe scale just a little bit. And I want to kind of fill these areas in just a little more like that. But overall, I thought the placement yesterday was pretty good. But that's probably going to be what we want right there for today's severe scale. And if I were to put a 4, it would be like somewhere right in here. But I don't think a 4 isn't quite necessary. So we're not going to do that with today's severe weather event. What other questions do we have? We're just about half an hour into the stream. Got a little while longer. So what other questions do we have? Got some new people joining me now. What questions do you have? Put a zip code in the chat, and I'll get to your individualized questions as well. I'll give you a local forecast for your location. What questions do we have, everyone? And I'll kind of while you do that, we'll if you have any questions, we will let's just kind of look at the satellite imagery going on over this region right now. Yeah, definitely a very complex system. Look at all the again, and I think all these early clouds are going to kind of prohibit the event a little bit. But if you see this open patch right here into West Texas, by the way, that's where we've got a fire threat today, driven by the wind and the dry conditions. Eventually, the kind of sunnier area is probably going to try and filter up into some of the areas that will eventually have supercell potential a little bit. Let's play this out. And yeah, you can definitely see that area of clouds is kind of shading this way. So we're probably going to see that drier area and the sunnier area at that filter on up into the enhanced zone by mid-afternoon, at least partially. And that's going to help out in fueling today's severe weather threat for sure over that area. But man, that's a big system. The entire west, pretty much 2/3 of the western part of the country is cloudy right now, especially on up here over this north central where we've already got some snow beginning. And then the southeast is really the only corner of the U.S. that is enjoying sunshine right now. But let's fully sunshine anyway. Let's 41301 says Tiffany Coleman. Let's type that in Campton, Kentucky, that area. Let's zoom out. It's nice and sunny for now. Let's play that out. Come on now. Here we go. Oh yeah, you're probably gonna get some rain. In fact, let's go back on over to the WeatherBell. You're gonna get some rain out of this event as we head towards the Tuesday time frame, I believe. Yep. As we go towards Tuesday, some rain, maybe a brief chance of some scattered showers and storms that could bring some gusty winds. And in Kentucky, you're definitely going to have to worry a little bit about the wind threat that could move on through those areas. In fact, going on over to the wind gusts out of the NAM model, you can definitely see maybe some 30, 40, 50 mile per hour gusts through Tuesday afternoon there. That could also be included with a little chance of some storms there as well. Not a major event, but certainly some gusty winds. And again, we'll have a little bit of a severe weather threat, mainly encompassing Indiana for gusty winds Tuesday afternoon. But that doesn't include all the other areas that are just going to see extended gusty winds just from the system on by itself. Rain May says, will the snow be gone by the time I come home? There in Wisconsin, pretty much, I don't expect much snow to still be lingering on the ground in many areas of Wisconsin out of this event behind the storm, as there will be that longer changeover to rain in parts of Wisconsin. And again, I can show you here what's going to happen out of this storm system. And watch, in most of Wisconsin, you get that heavy snow to start it out later today into tonight. Sure, most of the northern 2/3 of the state gets heavy snow, but look at how everybody in the state, Monday going into Tuesday, that is a long period of rain there, and I think that's really going to put a damper on snow accumulation. And you can see it really looks like if any changeover back to snow happens, it'll be late Tuesday into Wednesday. Man, this is an extended system, isn't it? It's a long system. It takes a while to get through. But if there's any changeover to snow, it'll be at the very end of the event, and it'll be pretty light. So in other words, there's probably not going to be much snow on the ground in Wisconsin when you come home from that trip you've been sending me messages about in the chat. So yeah, you probably won't have too much snow left on the ground to answer your question by the time you're back. As long as the drought starts improving. Yeah, I mean, definitely drought helping rain. In fact, let's look at the total precipitation. I'm glad I got you guys commenting because you're talking about these different parts of the event. Yeah, most of Wisconsin's going to get a couple inches of rain. So that is definitely very useful in terms of drought assistance. In fact, let's go back on over to, I don't want to do that, Weather Prediction Center. Yeah, here's our excessive rainfall outlook here. And it definitely looks like Wisconsin's going to miss the excessive rainfall outlook. I'm looking at it on my own end. The excessive rain will probably be closer to Arkansas and Mississippi as we go into Monday. But certainly some heavy rain up there, and that's definitely going to help with drought. In fact, let's take a look at the drought monitor, everyone, while Rain Maves is commenting. Uh, yeah, yep, updates every Thursday. There's that drought monitor from there it is. You can see a lot of the north central United States is really drought stricken right now, especially in Iowa. Oops, just hit the microphone. What other questions do we have? You can always put a zip code in the chat. I was just on one in Kentucky. I can get your zip code if you have any other areas as well. Anyone else? Um, we can certainly touch up on your forecast. So, what other questions does everyone have? Any other zip codes or questions? If not, we'll kind of bring this stream towards a conclusion. But again, I can hang on for a little while longer. McKinney, Texas, Caden Ruzica says, awesome. Let's get over to there. McKinney, Texas. Pull that on up. You're in the marginal risk, it looks like, for today. Yep. So we'll have to kind of watch those supercells as they try to head your way. Man, those are some interesting looking cells you could have in your area tonight around 10, 11 o'clock. I wouldn't expect widespread severe weather, but I mean, that kind of cell that kind of heads out of that slight risk area, that could still have a little bit of potency to it. And then tonight, that's probably that main event that has the higher certainty there. And it certainly looks like you could get, and this is a brand new run processing right now. Certainly looks like you could briefly get some gusty winds around 40, 50 to 60 miles per hour out of that northern end of that line in McKinney. So certainly keep a close watch on that this evening and into tonight on our Sunday evening here and overnight into early Monday morning. So maybe a brief tornado threat running out ahead of it closer to the middle of the night or the middle of the evening into the middle of the night. And then from there, we'll probably have a line that's more certain in terms of the impacts, and that'll probably be some brief gusty winds, some maybe hail around 1 inch in diameter in isolated fashion. And you're saying tomorrow just went enhanced as well. Let's take a look at that new outlook. I'm glad you said that. Coming up clutch in the chat. And I don't see that new outlook yet, if it did indeed go enhanced. But yeah, it has gone enhanced on the Storm Prediction Center's website, and taking a look at it, that does include a hatched risk for tornadoes tomorrow. And that's really interesting because I think this is going to be more of a line segment tomorrow with gusty winds along it. But that's certainly something we're seeing as well. They've added the 30% wind risk and a hatched tornado threat as well. So hopefully that'll update soon. I mean, that is definitely something we're going to be watching out for, some briefly strong tornadoes. And just to show everyone here, yep, 10% significant. Just to show you where that is, even though it isn't showing on my end yet, it's right in this area right here where the additional wind and tornado threat will be hatched. So tomorrow in this area, you need to be on very high alert. Yeah, that's not good impacts to be seeing moving on in that direction. They're in Natchez and Monroe and Jackson and Yazoo City. Yeah, this is as we go into Monday. Rain Maves. So that's tomorrow's risk. And again, it looks like more of a wind line to me. But if we get runners out ahead of it, supercells running out ahead of it, then I guess those will also be of concern. I just don't see many supercells on this. But there will probably be some embedded rotation along this line as well. So certainly not something we want to see there. And in fact, let's pull back, go back to the full screen mode here and take a look at that Storm Prediction Center outlook. Again, here's what it's looking like. Again, a hatched risk. That means we could get some EF2 tornadoes possible into Monday here over parts of eastern Louisiana going into Mississippi. Favorable low-level moisture will exist ahead of the convective line. Wind fields are expected to be very impressive. Again, that's something really interesting. And the photographs are going to be good. And again, embedded QLCS tornadoes. but based on the weakness of that potential QLCS, which is a quasi-linear convective system, the wording here being used is basically saying that it's going to be such a weak line that there will be more like individual appendages on some of the storms. It's not just going to be a straight line of wind. Um, so we'll definitely have to watch that. Air mass will become less unstable with eastward extent into Alabama. So that's interesting. But robust forward propagating line is their wording on that. Capable of both strong gusts and embedded tornadoes. I'm doing well, Girl Dev. Thanks so much for joining me here on the stream. We're kind of coming towards the close here, but we're looking at a tornado threat that's been elevated and upgraded as we head into our Monday here. Definitely not including your usual area of Terre Haute, Indiana, but down there in eastern Louisiana and southwest Mississippi, certainly praying for folks there as we go into the day tomorrow, as it looks like that event could definitely be a little bit higher than what's been expected based on recent outlooks. So the risk that we're looking at here is for parts of eastern Louisiana, southwestern Mississippi as we go into Monday, and that is after our risk that we have today over parts of Oklahoma and Kansas, mainly hail-driven. Tomorrow's risk is nowhere near hail-driven. Tomorrow's risk is most certainly tornado and wind threat-driven down there over parts of Louisiana and into Mississippi. And yeah, I'll probably update the custom graphics. Could do that right now. As we go into Monday. Let's change that. Monday. Oops, not February 25th. Yeah, but well, we're not going to fully do this, but I would keep a 3 for tomorrow, and I would kind of put it in this area right in here. So just keep that area in mind tomorrow. Somewhere right in here. That's probably where we're going to get that yellow color. Maybe even a 4, depending on what I continue to see. Again, I think this is definitely a precautionary 10%, and I'm glad it's a small one right now while we still try to pin out the details. There will be new model runs continuing to come out as we go into tomorrow morning. So we'll see what ends up happening out of this event, but it certainly doesn't look great as we go into Monday either. And I'm glad we were able to have a little bit more of a discussion of that as well on this stream here. I'm hoping to have some sort of like late video today, sometime late this afternoon into the evening. I don't know exactly when that would be, if I would end up actually doing that, but hopefully we'll have a final update or something to keep everyone informed later today. No guarantees on that, though. Yeah, they upgraded it for they upgraded those slight risk to enhanced very quickly, didn't they, Girl Dev? I agree with that, but I don't think these threats are going to be upgraded very quickly much. Although this event has a lot of wind energy with it. So Tuesday might end up having a slight risk somewhere, primarily probably for gusty winds Tuesday. It's interesting how each day kind of has a more focal point threat. Each day has their own little individual thing that we're going to be concerned about, for sure. And it's not all hail tornadoes, for sure. But yeah, make sure if you're an existing subscriber, once the stream ends, make sure you go on over to that subscribe button and turn those notifications on. It certainly will let you know when I post a video, go live, anything like that. So you never miss a beat here with One Nation Weather and my content right here on the channel. But I appreciate everybody's support. Again, we're looking at Tuesday's severe weather threat on screen right now. Today's looks like this for Sunday here. Mainly hail-driven threat, but some isolated tornadoes possible through the yellow and orange zones especially. As we go into Monday, we'll be watching a potentially now strong tornado threat conditionally down there over the Ark-La-Miss region. And then, of course, we'll continue to watch wind impacts, snow impacts out of the storm as well, as you got all these alerts across the country right